This painting, The Old Port at Menton, was the first time I ever laid eyes on any work of Anne Redpath's. And it was in a gallery. I kept seeing this, what seemed to me increasingly monumental work on one wall. My eye kept being drawn to it, and then back again, and then back again. I couldn't really take my eyes off it. When I started to look at it, it made me, it sort of excited me, if you could put it that way, in various ways. One was just the fact of the sort of the look of the picture itself, the solidity of the picture. And I get the feeling of maybe it's Mistral time or something like that, but a hot, strong wind blowing across this harbour front area, probably in the middle of the day when everyone's having a siesta. This is my interpretation of it, maybe completely wrong. When you look at it, it's a very strange perspective. It's like she's sort of painted it from above, and I imagine Anne Redpath in a balloon somewhere out at sea, looking down on the buildings there. Otherwise, how could she paint it in that way?
I know that she was born in Galashiels, the daughter of a Scottish tweed designer, and died in Edinburgh in 1965. She was as well known for her vivid still lifes as she was for landscapes.
With my awful magpie tendency to collect things, I have collected so many objects, round me, that are ready to be painted, as it were.
Rather like Anne Redpath, I'm always acquiring things, bringing things back from my travels, adding them to mementos that are already plastered all over the wall. But it's kind of important to me what I put where. I'm still looking for just the right place to hang my latest Redpath, the blue tablecloth. It's in the objects you collect that you see your own life reflected. I don't think I could live in a house with bare walls.
You see, I travelled abroad quite a lot. Naturally, when I came home, I bought a golden table, golden cups, candlesticks that I've had in France when I was first married, the little baby Christ from Lisbon, a cockerel that was painted, extravagant, all those things in my room. They're a mixture, but they've all been chosen by me, and therefore they live together, I think, quite happily.
I have a strong feeling of connection with Anne Redpath, but I know so little about her. I want to find out more about the paintings I have and the woman who painted them.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon. I've come to see Bill Smith.
Bill Smith.
Michael Palin.
Michael Palin, yes.
Yeah.
You should, sir.
Should be expected.
I'll give him a call.
Perhaps the biggest collection of her work is in the place you'd least expect to find it.
This is an extraordinary collection. How did it come to be here, in a bank in the city of London?
Well, simply, in 1968, we went into a new building, lot of bare walls. What do? And one of our directors suggested, why not buy a few pictures? And colleagues thought, wonderful idea, he was just left to get on with it.
I bought one of Anne Redpath's paintings sort of really in isolation. Now have another one. But can you tell me what her reputation is as an artist currently?
Well, certainly, she was one of the most respected and successful artists of her generation. In fact, I think she'll go down as one of the finest British women artists of the century. I think she's still underrated, say, outside Scotland. She was always sort of developing her art. One of the great things about Anne Redpath is that she was always pushing the boundaries forward. She didn't stand still, never got into a rut, as some painters do.
What I'm most interested in is the painting she did in France, and particularly, if possible, in Menton, which of course is the first one I got of hers.
Yes. Well, of course, this is Window in Menton, painted in 1949.
It's very different from the one I've got, which is a cluster of houses. But even in that one, there's obviously she's looking at something quite clearly, but when it comes out on canvas, it's slightly stylized.
In fact, it's almost 4 pictures in one. It's still life, there's a figure, it's an interior, and of course looking out across to the old buildings in Menton.
When you said it's one of her favourite paintings, how do you know that?
Well, in fact, painted in 1949, she kept it until 1963, and when someone wanted to buy it, a South African-born concert pianist who came to the Edinburgh Festival asked who he should meet, Anne Redpath, and he went in, loved the painting immediately, wanted to buy it, but she wouldn't. And it was only a couple of weeks later that she relented and was prepared to part with it. Quite a struggle to part with it, I think. Lovely picture.
The awful truth is becoming clear. To find out more about Anne Redpath, I might be forced to go to the south of France. Menton is on the French Riviera, squeezed in between the Mediterranean and the Alpes Maritimes. The inspiration Anne Redpath found here resulted not just in her favourite painting, but also in the painting that first caught my eye. Armed with a photo, I go to see if the old Port Menton still exists.
J'ai un problème, j'ai besoin de votre assistance. Cet tableau était fait depuis 50 ans ici. Oui. Mais les bateaux, je ne peux pas voir.
Il n'y en a plus comme ça.
Oui, il n'y en a plus.
Ça n'existe plus.
Il y avait ici, et là il y avait le sable, il y a les palmiers.
Pardon. Le Menton?
Oui.
Là? The Menton.
Is that painted from down there?
I think maybe.
Because you have got. I think
I'll go down to the corner.
Yeah. Oh, to the roundabout there.
Yes,
And have
which
a
is
look.
new. The roundabout is new.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Merci. Vous connaissez? Ah. Le coin ici, c'est le coin.
Il y avait l'eau.
L'eau.
Ici il y avait de
Ici.
l'eau.
No,
avant.
the water came to here.
Quand il y avait mauvais temps, les bateaux,
In the bad weather,
on les ramène là.
Ah, they put them up there. We're just about on the corner here, on the corner of the picture. She would have perhaps been in the prison. She could have painted this from on top of that building over there, which he said was a prison, and was sort of connected by, because it was a prison, you couldn't really get to it because there was water in between. But she could have been up on those walls looking down, which would account for the fact that we've got this sort of high angle looking at it. Sort of looks right because you've got the street going up there. That is obviously a road now. And I think it's about, might be somewhere like that. Now the old guy who I was talking to said the paints had been changed. Mountains. Not bad, they're misty, the Alpes Maritimes. You can't see them very clearly, but that just about figures. Yeah. So I think that's about it. And these little trees that are so distinctive have obviously been replaced by palms now. But what I really, a riddle that always interested me was this feeling of the wind on your face as you're there. You know, there's a storm going and the wind blowing their clouds. Figures with what the guy said about moving the boats up. And that's a real riddle solved, that is. It's a pity about all these trees getting in the way, but I think that's pretty much it.
I do feel so concerned about the things I paint. Whether they are houses or altars, I would paint houses on a hillside. I would exaggerate the buttressed quality of the building. Instead of having it at right angles to the earth, I would exaggerate the fact that the base of it was broader than the top of it, and therefore it looked as if it were growing out of the hill. And then to come back home And paint a still life, I couldn't paint it in a smooth way anymore. I had to paint it as if it were a sort of encrusted jewel, you know.
I love her work, and I like the way she looks at the world. There are things in her paintings which obviously remind her of a very intense feeling she had while she was in another place.
250 peut-être, mais... She was by all accounts a great traveller. She went to France, Spain, Portugal, Venice, the Canary Islands. She was still travelling in the last year of her life. Aldo Adoni, a family friend, remembers her coming to Menton.
C'était une femme, pour peu que je l'ai connue, enfin c'était une femme merveilleuse. Elle avait toujours le sourire. Hein. Et alors elle pensait toujours, elle regardait toujours à droite, à gauche. Elle voyait des tableaux partout, vous voyez. Elle aimait Menton, en plus c'est le métier pour mes beaux-parents. Elle en profitait pour venir à Menton, pour rester quelques jours là. Il y avait son mari, Monsieur Mickey, mon beau-père qui transformait le château Saint-Ger à l'intérieur, oui. Et Monsieur Mickey, c'était l'architecte de Saint-Ger. Alors c'est comme ça qu'ils se sont connus et qu'ils étaient devenus des amis, vous voyez. Ben, la fenêtre, c'est celle-ci. Elle se mettait là, vous voyez. Se mettait à la fenêtre avec la petite chaise qu'elle a fait couper les jambes, là, les pieds, pardon. Et elle se mettait là, elle faisait le tableau là. Mais comme que moi j'ai travaillé, j'étais pas là dans la journée, vous voyez. Alors c'est ma femme qui me disait, faisait ici, faisait là. Je l'ai vu quelques fois qu'elle travaillait, qu'elle se mettait là, mais je ne l'ai jamais vu faire vraiment un tableau complet, moi.
She never completed a painting on the spot. She would make notes and sketches and finish it later in her studio. So the picture is her memory of what it felt like to sit in this window and remember that time in the 20s and 30s when she was Mrs. Mickey, the architect's wife, who lived with her family in a millionaire's paradise. The Redpath Trail leads me to the exclusive world of Saint-Jean Cap Ferrat.
Hello.
What was your name, sir?
Michael Palin.
The Michael Palin.
Oh, just a Michael
I
Palin.
will open for you with that letter.
Thank you.
I find that not only does the Redpath residence from 1929 to 1934 exist, but it still remains a temple of unrestrained wealth. They actually lived in a boathouse in the grounds, leaving the chateau to the millionaire in residence, who in those days was an American. Alterations, improvements and additions to the house could be made on a whim, which her husband, James Mickey, was there to satisfy. Meanwhile, their family was growing. Their 3 children were all boys. The youngest, David, remembers the impact of these extraordinary surroundings.
The south of France in the 20s and 30s was really quite an exotic place. There were American millionaires and tourists and Russian countesses, white Russian countesses. It was a very interesting time for my parents. When I go back to the south of France, it tweaks a nerve of nostalgia, if you like, because a sense of sun and colour, but also perfumes, you know, pine trees and lavender. I think that's the sort of thing that remains with me.
Well, this must have been where she lived for so long. This is the boathouse. I imagine for Anne Redpath, who loved contrast, it must have been extraordinary. Not only this wonderful sort of luxury around her, not here, this is a fairly simple place, but the luxury of the villa, the view of Cap Ferrat, as an amazing contrast with where she'd come from, the rather sort of respectable Calvinist Scotland she'd left behind some years before. And the extraordinary thing is that she lived here on this coast, which has inspired all many of the great painters of the 20th century, the people like Matisse and Vuillard that she liked so much. And yet, while she was here, she barely painted at all. She just looked after her husband and the 3 children. And then, of course, in the 30s, all this glittering time came to an end. The Depression came, and the millionaire up the hill went bust, and they were forced to move. But, I mean, this life in the boathouse for Anne Redpath must have been an incredible experience in the roaring 20s.
My mother never thought she had lost something by not having a dynamic career painting during all these years that she was living in France and bringing up her family. She said that there weren't wasted years at all. In fact, all the experiences that she had had went into making her painting stronger when she resumed painting latterly. It was never, ever something she regretted, not for a moment.
Anne and her husband left France in 1934, but they did leave something behind. Away from the coast, in a Carthusian monastery above Toulon, is a fresco depicting the legend of St. Rosalind. It's the product of an uneasy collaboration between Anne and her husband. Father Bruno told me the story.
Sainte Roselyne est une jeune fille très pieuse, très généreuse, et elle donnait souvent du pain aux pauvres, vous voyez, tous les pauvres. Et son père lui avait défendu de donner du pain. Hein. Un jour, alors, il la voit qui donnait du pain aux pauvres, il vient pour la gronder, et à la place du pain, on trouve des roses. Alors son père, par vénération, voyez-vous, s'agenouille devant elle et baise la main de sa fille. Alors lui, le mari, architecte, a commencé à peindre les fresques. Et puis ensuite, il a abandonné. On m'a dit, il avait...
Pourquoi?
On ne sait pas. Ah, ça, je ne peux pas dire. Hein. Alors, moi, je vous le raconte comme les anciens me l'ont raconté. Quoi. Alors, après, sa femme est venue avec ses enfants.
Sa femme, Anne Redpath.
Oui, Mickey, pour demander aide.
Ah, aide, oh oui.
Oui. Alors, le supérieur, le prieur, lui a dit, mais finissez. Finissez ce qu'a fait, ce qu'a commencé votre mari, finissez, et on vous aidera. Alors, pendant qu'elle faisait ça, elle a habité à l'hôtellerie extérieure, parce que comme nous sommes cloîtrés, alors nos mères, nos sœurs ne rentrent pas dans l'intérieur.
Combien de jours?
4 jours. J'aime beaucoup parce que je fais un peu de peinture. Oh là, très très bien. Très très bien. Mais alors, celui de la Chartreuse, il n'y est pas dessus?
Non.
Ah, faut le mettre.
Je ne sais pas.
Oh, hôtel, là, chapelle.
Oui, oui.
Saint-Jean de
Treboul, yeah. Mais pas de Chartreuse. Anne and her husband would separate on their return to Scotland. She divided her time between her children and a renewed appetite for painting. It was in Edinburgh that Anne Redpath really came into her own in the later part of her life. She stopped being just Mrs. Mickey. She was Anne Redpath, doyenne of a cultural circle here in Edinburgh, accomplished, respected artist. This is where the end of my search begins.
She came to Edinburgh a few years after the war ended, and Edinburgh was putting itself together, and the Edinburgh Festival had started. There was an enormous sense of optimism and hope.
David lives in Edinburgh with his wife Eileen. He's inherited his mother's love of colour. He understands her painting techniques. From him I hope to find clues as to how it was that in the autumn of her life, Anne Redpath was bold, experimental and prolific. All the characteristics of a much younger artist.
The way she worked, of course, was to paint and then scrape down and paint and scrape down and paint and scrape down, and you got an accumulation of colour in different levels. While she used a palette knife a great deal and she whacked on the paint, you know, with great slabs, she actually had a piece of chain mail that she rubbed over and scored the thing, and so the paint itself was extremely disturbed and lumpy.
I think that I've always been interested, for instance, in the textural quality of paint and painting. And while in a way they're more abstract, you see, than they were before, yet they're still quite real. And I don't think they ever will be completely lost in abstraction.
Lovely.
I brought you some tea.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, the cups were Anne's.
The cups are Anne's.
Yes.
Lovely, and her collectibles.
Yes.
Many of Anne's beloved objects have found a home here. It's as if she's just swept through the room and left a presence in the things she'd touched. Eileen Mickey was her favourite model.
I'm sitting in front of a window at Menton, the back of my head.
Oh, right. Yes,
She rang me up one day and said, I need somebody with a plain face. And I said, oh, thanks very much. So I knew what she meant. Yeah. So I went out and I sat. And but she'd done the drawing at Menton, outside the window. But she wanted a figure sitting in front of it. So I sat for that.
Oh, you sat in a number of pictures for her.
Yes.
There's a lovely picture of you in the chair. And you're always reading. Was this something she asked you to do?
No, it was my stipulation. I was too boring just sitting doing nothing. So she reckoned I was a lucky sitter for her because I sold well.
Oh, there's Menton. Oh, good heavens. That's the picture I've got, isn't it? I think it is. Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yes. That's lovely to see the artist right next to. I'm sorry, I'm being very sort of self-interested here, but there it is. Yes,
nice to see
yes.
you.
That's where we went and tried to find out where that was from. That means so much more to me now.
Good.
Oh dear, that's after her illness.
Yes, I think this is after her second heart attack. First one took place in London at one of our openings at Regent Fair in London. And I went with her in the ambulance to Guy's, and stayed on in London for a bit because, she was really extraordinarily brave. That's another aspect of her. She was extraordinarily brave about her illnesses, and it was a tremendous, handicap in the last number of years of her life.
Did she keep painting right up to the end of her life?
Yeah, she did. And at one time, after one of her coronaries, she had a frozen shoulder, which is apparently quite a common thing, and she couldn't use her right arm at all, so she painted for a while with using her left hand.
There is another way it affected her, is that I think when you become very, very seriously ill with what was really quite literally a life-threatening illness, I think it gives you a real sense of mortality, or your own mortality. And I think that maybe, I don't want to sound fanciful, but I think that there's something about the very, very late paintings that she did, which have a kind of an emotional kick about them, may have been influenced a bit by the sense of threat she had from these heart attacks.
Well, I think an artist's life is really, by the very nature of the temperament of an artist, I think it is a life of contrasts. You would find in the same church, for instance, which interested me, an altar which was gold and silver and purple, almost vulgar in its extravagance, but very paintable. But not far away from it, you would get again a whitewashed wall with a bit of wrought iron and a little black figure. And I found both those things so eminently paintable.
One of the very rewarding things she stood for was making something really rather marvelous out of something ordinary. She could look at a white cup and saucer and a white tablecloth and think it was really magical.
I've found a place to hang the blue tablecloth. I don't know why I agonized over it. I should, in the spirit of the painting itself, have just put it up alongside all the other things I live with. What I've discovered about Anne Redpath's work is that it's not above life, it's part of it. I think that's a masterpiece, a friendly masterpiece.